Hello YouTube, we are back today with a deck profile that has been requested by several of you this past week. We will be discussing the GabuBond Ukko-Rush deck that I was playing on a couple of the gameplay videos last week. GabuBond, personally for me, has always been my favorite Digimon, and when the bond mechanic dropped in BT-14, I was over the moon. The deck, along with 4 Ice Wall, was definitely something that, most folks are not going to be missing in our community. But I will always gladly take any opportunity to try and spice my boy back into any deck. This particular iteration was inspired after I got absolutely massacred and swarmed by rookies playing against Jarrell and his Ukko-Rush deck that you probably have also seen on previous gameplay videos. So you all can thank him for this. As with our previous deck profiles, we are going to be going over my ratios first, and then diving into more of a discussion of sorts on how I like to pilot the deck, how I like to set up my combo plays, and what makes the deck tick in a sense. So without further ado, let's hop right into deck profile. Hey there everybody, a quick interruption for you all before we continue with our scheduled programming for today. As you probably saw in Jarrell's short from yesterday, we are growing and at a really just extremely fast rate, and we have you guys to thank for all of that. We are now TCG player affiliates, and we just launched our very own Discord that is live right now. And we plan on using that Discord for future events, community interaction, and continuing to find ways to grow our channel and our community. Our Instagram will also be a little bit more active than it was in previous months. Links to all of our socials will be down below, so please do feel free to check it out. Thank you again for all the support, and back to our scheduled programming. Alrighty guys, so to start off with our eggs, we're running 4 of the soon-to-be restricted Bukamon. Bukamon is just a really good blue egg. I mean, I don't really have much else to say about it outside giving your stacks jamming with some of the source strip stuff and balancing manipulation aspects of this deck that are present. Jamming is going to be a very easy condition to meet, and you really don't have a reason to run any other egg. I think once we end up getting the restriction list into effect this coming March, I probably would swap the egg out for like a Wanyamon to help me with my draw power. But for now, I think most blue decks don't have any other reason to run another egg but Bukamon. Moving on to the rookies, we've got 4 of the BT-6 GabuBond. This one allows couple of things to pop off. The inheritable is really what you use it for, and the inheritable being, when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon's name is GabuBond Bond of Friendship, unsuspend it. So this allows your GabuBond to swing potentially for 3 checks, which is like, it's just huge. I think being able to just bounce 3 different level 5s potentially, or level 5s and below, and then swing 3 security is absolutely insane in this format. So I think best rookie by far. We supplement it with 4 of the EX1 GabuBond. This is one I like to go into more early game, like turn 1 or turn 2. I think the inheritable of when attacking, being able to cycle 3 cards, pick out either a GabuBond or a Tamer, a GabuBond a name or Tamer, is just huge value. And note that you can also pick up GabuBond with this card too. So as long as it has GabuBond and name, you can pick it up. And it's a Tamer. It's not necessarily a blue Tamer. So if you're missing like a Ooyy, you can pick up a Ooyy off of this effect too, which I think is good. Really good searching and cycling. We run 2 of the starter deck from the All Force Vidramon starter deck GabuBond. I really just use this as another GabuBond target. I personally felt that 8 GabuBonds was a little low, just because I felt like I wanted to make sure I was able to hit Bond when I wanted to. And being able to give myself more rookies in the back to digivolve into is also really good for consistency's sake. So I decided to run 2 of these just to have 10 total. If you want to do the Drabu or the original, I think it's BT-1 GabuBond, then you can do that. The one that basically says on play draw 1. You can use that as well if you want to, but I just chose to do the starter deck one. And to round out the level 3s, we're running 4 Ukko-Mon. Ukko-Mon's such a good card. Once per turn, whenever something moves from the breeding area into the battle area, number 1, you can gain a memory, and number 2, you can hatch an egg. So pairs really well with Ooyy, which we'll be talking about in a little bit. Also pairs really well with our Matashitas, which we'll also be talking in a little bit. So this card I think is just huge value. Moving on to the level 4s, we're going to be running 3 Lanamon. I think it's still a really good card, not just for a hybrid perspective, but also just a level 4 for this deck. You know, it's not a bad play to go over this GabuBond here, the EX1 GabuBond, and then swing in for a check. If you have, for example, a rookie that you can slide under, you can give the stack jamming. Bukamon inherently will most times give it jamming as well, so you don't necessarily have to use it. But having Lanamon being able to swing, cycle with the EX1 GabuBond, and then still being on the board and having your opponent like worry about either a Zudo Ace or just like having to commit resources to getting rid of her, I still think is really good. So I run her at a 3 of. We then do sort of your typical hybrid package with 3 Korikaku and 4 Kumamon. I like having the hybrids because, as you can tell, like the end game or one of my possible win strats is to go into just hybrid for game. And with how Matt Ishida and the Ukko-Lui package allows me to gain a ton of memory, hybrids become super viable as a win strat. So I try to not run a maximum number of hybrids, but enough where I'm able to use them to digivolve, but I'm also able to use them just to kind of close out games too. Level 5s, we're only going to run 2. We're running 2 Zudo Aces. May be a weird choice for some. People might question, you know, where's your Beowulf Mons if you're talking about using hybrids. Definitely a fair point. You know, being able to digivolve for 1, return a hybrid or recycle a hybrid's really good for what it does. I like Zudo Ace just because, number 1, the source strip capability, particularly in today's meta, I think is super relevant. Pairs very well with Bukamon, and also just is a good control piece. Being able to strip sources and bounce potentially, I think is nice value. Like I said, you know, with Lanamon in particular, being able to swing and then threaten a Zudo to go into it, strip, and bounce on their turn as a Blast Evo or counter also can represent good, like, sort of tempo control. And being able to just, you know, slam them down for 4 and have something on board, I think it also just represents really efficient play. So I chose Zudo over Beowulfmon. I can definitely see the argument though for Beowulfmon instead. To round out our Digimon, we're going to be running 3 of the GabuBond. So when attacking, the busted part about this card is that you can bounce a level 5 or lower, and this is not a once per turn. So every time Bond will restand and swing, you can bottom deck something. That's level 5 or below, obviously. So really good card. We'll talk about this more in the discussion portion of the video, but I utilize him more so as like an alternative win strat. I'm not actively like searching for Bond. I'm not saying Bond is my win con, but definitely a way to win for sure. You know, particularly late game paired up with the BT-14 GabuBond, really can do so much to seal the game out. Moving on to our Tamers, which is sort of the heart and soul of our deck. We're going to be running 4 Louis, movie promo Louis. Essentially what Louis will do is on play, you get to move something from raising, which pairs very nicely with Ukkomon. And, you know, during your turn, if something does move from your breeding area to the battle area, you can suspend Louis to gain a memory. So a cheeky play that'll typically happen, right, is you promote Ukkomon from raising. So by promoting Ukkomon, you can proc Ukkomon's effect, which is gain a memory and hatch. If you have a Gabumon in your hand, you go ahead and digivolve into Gabumon. If you have your Matt Ishida set up, which we're going to be running 4 of, say you have like 2 Matt Ishidas, what you can do is go ahead and play Louis for 3. You can push your Gabumon up, which then procs your Matt Ishida effects, which is gain a memory and draw 1 every time a Gabumon or Garurumon promotes from raising to battle area. You can suspend Louis since something was moved from raising to battle area, essentially potentially making that Louis free cost. You promote the Gabumon, you gain your memory, you draw your cards, and now you have another body on the field that can swing and do chip damage or potentially go into GabuBond, right? Which is what this Tamer allows you to do. These two, in my opinion, are sort of the driving force behind what you want to do, which is why I maxed them out. I'm working on getting my event pack mats because they look absolutely beautiful. But he's just so good and so cracked for the bond mechanic. Do note though that if you are going to choose to warp Digivolve, you do have to do two things. First of all, you have to trash 2 security, so to keep that in mind. Second of all, you also will basically have Bond die because it just sort of is like you warp, but after you do your shenanigans, if you have any more than 0 security, Bond will die. So that Digimon will die, so do keep that in mind. It's not like, oh, you can Digivolve into Bond and then it stays on the field. It doesn't do that. Davis is our memory setter. We run him at a 2 of. Good for just picking up your blue pieces and giving you 3 memory to start your turn. I don't run him at more of just because with how many tamers we're running and options, the chance to brick with him is there. You don't get to pick up Ukko-Lui as well, so another potential miss. So I didn't want to use too much of Davis, but I do see why he's very beneficial. You know, having the 3 memory buffer to start off with is so clutch. We run 2 Sora-Jo and 2 Tomihime, mainly because, you know, with some of these source strip aspects to this deck as well as the bounce mechanics to this deck, you really want to be able to utilize Sora and Tommy to your advantage and get you memory. Being able to net as much memory as possible is part of the mantra of this deck. And I think both of these pair very well with your hybrids and give you that sort of source strip memory advantage that you're looking for. In terms of options, we run 1 of the Ice Wall. We run 2 blue memory boosts, mainly to give you that extra memory and help dig for your pieces early game. And then we run 4 Sorai, mainly because this is a meta where Sorai reigns supreme. Being able to anticipate, you know, a Fenry play or D-Brigade play is, I think, really beneficial for you. Also, just hitting it out of security and having it proc its effect there can do wonders for you. This card has definitely saved me games, not just with this deck, but in multiple blue decks that I've played, such as like Mirage and whatnot. So I think Sora, particularly in this meta game, is absolutely important. And I think moving into EX5, BT-14, even like it's just going to keep gaining value. So I think Sora absolute must at a 4. You know, if other considerations I would make are things like Great Maelstrom, the 9-cost option to allow you to bottom deck something. You know, big removal cards are nice, but I think for me, I focus more so on source strip and having my opponents have just sort of naked bodies on the field to give me my memory from the Sora-Jos. But I can definitely see like removal cards being important, so maybe cutting down like 1 or 2 Sora to throw in those, I think is definitely a good option. But that's the deck, guys. Let me know what you guys think. We're going to be moving into our deck discussion portion of this right away. Alrighty, guys. So a lot of folks, you know, may not know how GabuBond works. You know, I've taken this to a couple of online events, and whenever I've played Bond in these, people are like, wait, what the hell does this card do? So just a little brief overview on what GabuBond as a card and as a mechanic is. It was first introduced in BT6 when there was that sort of like Kizuna or the Bond of Bravery, Bond of Friendship themed booster packs were first released. It was an insane amount of aggression and control, particularly at that time and in the way that the meta was. Unfortunately, the meta has outpaced it now, so it doesn't have as much oomph as it did before, but I still think it's a great supplemental piece for a lot of blue decks and an excellent top end still for what blue as an overall archetype likes to do. You know, being able to basically return an opponent's field to the bottom of their deck with the Bond when attacking effect, and being able to proc that not just once, not just twice, but as many times as you can restand itself is absolutely insane. And the ability to just warp from a level 3 to 11 still has a lot of value, you know, in today's meta. So that's what Bond likes to do. It likes to hit you fast, control your board, and just kind of blow you away in that sense. Now, there are a lot of variants to GabuBond as an archetype or as a package. There are many different ways you can run it and throw it into various blue decks. More commonly, initially, we saw the Leomon package, which sort of mixed in hybrids, and the Leomon Tamer, which was Jerry. and Leomon himself to get early chip damage, and then using Bond as an endgame finisher. We saw that with more of a blue hybrid centric build as well, where we focused on what the blue hybrid mechanics were, which were stun, board control, memory manipulation to get your early pokes in, and then using Bond as an ultimate finisher as well. I tried out a blue flare variant, which was an early deck profile in the channel, which I had a lot of fun with. I wouldn't call it meta contending by any means, but it was definitely a fun deck to play around with. And we also saw some success at previous tournaments just before Nationals last year, where there were a few folks who were spicing in the Ancient GabuBond package and using that as a supplement to what Bond want to do. That deck in particular was a very, like, hit you fast, hit you in many different ways sort of deck, where you just did your combo plays, warped, swung for multiple checks, died, and did it all over again. So it's an interesting package, and you got a lot of different variation as to how you can really throw GabuBond in these different archetypes. So, you know, playtesting with Jarrell, as you can see in previous gameplay videos, he did have this very spicy Ukko-Rush deck. And when I saw that, it really had me thinking as to how, you know, this would be perfect for Bond, right? You know, Bond in a sense relies on early pokes, at least the way I like to play it, where you almost take a rookie rush sort of perspective, and then you use Bond as your ultimate finisher. And I really thought that the Ukko-Mon and Louis package helped just take that to a whole new level. Using Ukko-Mon to hatch and have a rookie ready to go basically expedites you a turn. Louis lets you push your rookies out almost just infinitely, depending on how many Louis you have. And that pairs up very, very well with the BT-6 Matashita. For those who don't know, you know, BT-6 Matashita allows you to do two things. The first thing it allows you to do is warp into GabuBond with a level 3 GabuMon on the field. So basically saying, hey, you know, ignoring the Digivolution requirements, just go into Bond for the Digivolution cost, with the caveat that if you have any security, the Bond will die, you know, and it'll go away and you kind of lose that Bond mechanic, and you do pitch to security. So it does come with a cost. Now, the second thing, which is what I'm utilizing with this Ukko-Mon Louis package, is that every time you raise a GabuMon or a Garurumon from your raising into the battle area, you get to gain a memory and you get to draw a card. Note that this is not, and I repeat, this is not a once per turn effect. So if you can imagine the amount of times that you can just spam Louis, raise GabuMon, gain memory, and draw advantage with Matt is just absolutely insane. And I thought, you know, combining the blue hybrid package along with GabuBond, you really find a very versatile and very aggressive deck. I will say GabuBond is definitely not the focus of the deck. It is something that I utilize as a sort of win con or an alternative win con, but I'm not actively looking to go into Bond to win my matches. I'm usually trying to utilize more so the blue hybrid package, but using GabuBond as, like I said, ways to control board and also ways to just straight up finish the game. So when it comes to early and mid-game setup, what you really want to do, as with any sort of hybrid deck, is to establish your tamers. You really, really want to see Matt, you know, turns, like say turn 0 to turn 3. If you can establish at least one of him on the board, I think it gives you a good amount of value. Even early game, right? Like if you're not looking to Bond right away, just being able to push up a GabuMon, potentially draw 1 or 2 cards, and unbrick your hand has just a lot of late game implications. So getting a mat or 2 down, you know, early game is absolutely just high value for this deck. I would try to utilize Ukko-Mon early as well to just help get that early chip damage, because if you can get multiple rookies out and just kind of get 2 or 3 security away from your opponent, that really puts them in the danger zone for you to just say, look, I can just Bond for game, you know. And that's really the goal of this deck, is to just chip away at security with your low end, stay low to the ground, have enough tamer advantage for the late game where you can say, look, I can either go into GabuBond, or I can say I have enough tamers on the field and enough memory, I can just hybrid, and end up going for game there. So you have multiple ways to approach it. but your early game should really be established tamers and chip away with your rookies. And then when you're going into your late game, that's when you can really play around with how the deck is and what the board state is like, and choose how you want to approach the late game. You really want to utilize your tamers. Like I said, Matt is huge, but your other tamers like Sora Joe will net you a lot of memory. Having a Davis out is also pretty clutch because having that 3 memory to start off with ensures that you can at least string along a couple plays. And also, like, if you pair Davis with Matt, I mean, you can just skyrocket to insane amounts of memory. Being able to play a Louis essentially becomes free, with Davis and Mats and stuff set up that way. So I really think your tamers give you all the advantage in this deck. If you can, like I said, Louis to promote multiple GabuBonds and proc Matt's effect multiple times, like, you're sitting in a pretty good spot because you're more than likely to draw into your pieces. You have enough memory to do whatever the hell you want to do with the turn, and that's when you can really just overwhelm and swarm your opponent. And don't be afraid to just simply rookie rush. Like, it's not a bad strategy, particularly in today's meta field where sometimes low to the ground fast decks can just outpace some of these big OTK decks. So don't be afraid to simply just rookie rush your opponent down. Like, that's not a bad strategy whatsoever. And that is really the deck. This is a simple, fun deck in my opinion to play. I've had a lot of fun just playing around with it. It's had some success. It's had some bricky moments too. So I'm definitely not going to call this like a tier 1 deck. But if you want a deck that's fun to play, you've missed playing the GabuBond mechanic, or you just love the Bond and GabuBond engine in general, highly recommend this deck. The Louis and Ukko-Mon package really, I think, is just huge for not just this deck, but any deck that likes to go low to the ground, has that like rookie rush feel to it. I think these 2 pieces are just absolutely insane value. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know what other things you would have teched in. As some of you may have seen in the comments from those gameplay videos, I did end up proccing the trainings a little bit incorrectly, so I did swap those out for a memory boost, as you can see here. But yeah, those are overall the changes that I made. This is the deck, and hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate the support. As we've alluded to, the channel is growing, and we really have you guys to thank for it. So the amount of thanks that we give you is just, we can't say enough. So please feel to comment down below with any other suggestions you have for the channel. Feel free to check out our socials, join our Discord, interact more with us. We love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.